Okay, part 3 of Unit 2A, Big Ideas, and we are on this third question. Question 3. Okay, so this says in the diagram, DE, line DE, is congruent to line JI. Okay. So that's some already information that we can use. So DE is congruent to line JI, and I'm showing that on my paper. You should do that as well. And we have angle D, this angle, is congruent to angle J, right here. So I'm going to show that as well. Which additional information is sufficient to prove that triangle DEF is congruent to JHI? Well, what triangle congruence theorem could we use here? I have a side and I have an angle, so I could maybe use, well, I definitely couldn't use angle side. We all know about that one. We can't use that. But if I have a side and then an angle, well, I'm gonna need another side. I think side angle side might be the easiest. So let's see if we can do that. And it says, what additional information would help us prove that they were congruent? And I'm looking for another side. I'm gonna pause your video and see if you can see where else another side is congruent. Okay, so maybe you saw that HF is congruent to HF. That's by the reflexive property of congruence, because they share a side, so they're the same. So these two are the same, but if I am looking for D to F to be the same, then that means I'm going to need D to H to be the same as F to J. Is that one of our options? Let's see, ED and IH. No, that doesn't really help us with the whole this side, these bottom side situation. And then we have DH and JF. Well, that's exactly what we need. We need this side to be congruent to this side. We already have that this side is congruent, so then the bottom sides would be congruent if this was true. So B is your correct answer for what additional information would be sufficient to prove these two triangles are congruent. So for a problem like this, I would definitely recommend like writing down what you have, drawing the picture, and then being like, okay, what do I need? I need another side, and then just like filling in the missing information as you go. Okay, last page. And we got some lovely fill-in proofs, our favorite. And it says for this problem, in this diagram, the line CD is the perpendicular bisector of AB. The two-column proof show congruent. Oh, something got cut off. The two-column proof shows congruent to BC. Which of the following would justify step 6? Okay, so we're looking what would justify that ADC, that triangle, is congruent to BDC. Let's look at like what was already given to begin with. So that's always my first step. It says CD is the perpendicular bisector of AB. That was given to us in the problem. And we have AD is congruent to BD. That's the definition of a bisector. It cuts it in half. So I'm going to mark my page showing that these two lines are congruent. And it says CD is congruent to CD by the reflexive property of congruence. They share a line, so they're congruent. That makes sense. So I'm marking the paper. And it says ADC, and BDC are right angles by the definition of perpendicular lines. Yep, perpendicular lines form a 90 degree, so I'm going to mark that on the paper. And then, and we see right here that these two angles are congruent because all right angles are congruent. And well, now with the information that we have, how could we prove that ADC is congruent to triangle BDC? Well, what do we have? Pause and tell me what triangle postulate would help us with this problem. Okay, so I hope you saw that we have a side, and we have an angle, and we have a side. So therefore, these triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. Is that an option? Yes, it is. That is option C. So C, side, angle, side, would prove that these two triangles are congruent and would complete our proof to show that side AC is congruent to side BC. Okay, and last question. We have, okay, so it says, in this diagram, STU is an isosceles triangle where ST is congruent to UT. The two-column proof shows that angle S is congruent to angle U. And we are missing a reason. So which reason is missing in the proof? Well, let's read through. It says ST is congruent to UT. That's given, and it's actually already marked on our picture. And then number 2 says construct TV. So construct means we're going to do it. Construct TV, the angle bisector for this angle T, where V is on SU. So that means we're making this angle bisector. It's going through this angle, and this would be V. So that's TV. We constructed it. And then every angle has a bisector. That is true. And we have that STV is, this angle is congruent to UTV. So I marked that. And that's the definition of an angle bisector. So if it's cut in half, then they're both the same. And then we have TV is congruent to TV. That's the reflexive property of congruence. So I can mark that. These two are congruent. And we have that triangle STV is congruent to triangle UTV by side, angle, side. Side, angle, side. Everything's making sense so far. But we want to get to that angle S is congruent to angle U. Well, how would we know that? How would we know that angle S is congruent to angle U? Let's look at our options. We have CPCTC. That means congruent parts of congruent triangles are congruent. We have the reflexive property of congruence, the definition of right angles, and angle congruence postulate. So I already know that it's not going to be D or C. We're not using the angle congruence postulate, and this hasn't led us to a point where we know that angle S and angle U are right angles. The reflexive property of congruence would mean that S and U are shared. Well, are S and U shared? Are they like right on top of each other like TV? No, so not B. So therefore we have that the answer is A, CPCTC, that congruent parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And we see that right above step 6 was that these two triangles are congruent, and that's why it makes sense to use CPCTC. We already have that the triangles are congruent, therefore we know that the parts that correspond are also congruent. So you can mark that on your triangle, and then we have CPCTC. Okay, so that was Unit 2A. Make sure you have all of your notes filled out to turn in when you come back. and you can go ahead and get started on the Unit 2A exit ticket. Okay, see you for 2B.